And in the UK, the press calls them cowboys. I mean, we'd laugh. The scientists in the UK, when this was proposed as an end run around the sanctity of life of human experimentation, said that they would not abuse this. The scientists promised they wouldn't abuse it. 5 years later, they've abused it up one side and down the other, and they're now, rethinking the whole thing. Human nature being such as it is, if you give it no constraints, it will be unrestrained. And it will always be self-centered and motivated by self-interest. So the transgenic aspect of human-animal hybrids is in our midst today. We have them. I'm meeting with the top cloner in America today, working with the Family Research Council to develop public policy that would restrict the creation of human-animal hybrids, but still allow for certain advances in transgenic research. In other words, we're not shutting down transgenic research. We're just defining the limits of it to protect innocent human life. Now, this is a total figment of some artist's imagination. Patricia Piscini, entitled The Young Family. This is a transgenic illustration of what she considers the future may hold. Certainly, scientifically, there's no doubting that that could be. This is real. The upper right is goat and sheep have been crossed, creating the first Jeep. That's a cartilage of a human ear growing on the back of a hairless mouse for transplant purposes. And, we have the glow-in-the-dark human, but what about glow-in-the-dark pigs that preceded glow-in-the-dark humans? Because they are medically as near to the human body as anything in the animal kingdom. So pigs are also being experimented on. In the University of Georgia, they're being created with 100% human blood. They're being created with a single human gene that grows a pig heart or a pig liver or some other pig organ that when transplanted into the human body won't be rejected by the human body because of the transgenic gene. We don't have a theology for this. The church has not yet responded with a theology of the cowboys in the UK. Do they have a soul? What happens when a 98% human, 2% cow dies? I mean, we haven't engaged yet. This is new territory. And it's so cutting edge that we don't have answers.
Or better yet, what happens when it murders another real human?
Or can we create a subhuman species to do our bidding, to enslave, to look like us, talk like us, reason like us, but because they're not us? Or I've got a better one. What happens if the transhumanists are successful and they create a Homo Perfectus that is only given to some, but not to all? What happens to us? Do we become the subspecies? The gen rich and the gen poor. Gene rich, gene poor. As Nigel said, these are profound public policy discussions that are coming upon us as we speak. And it's something that we as the church, as the movement that argues for the sanctity of life, should be involved in. The glow-in-the-dark human from Cornell that is killed because it's not a human. How about this one? Did any of you ever see the science fiction movie called The Island? The Island. Anybody? Okay. This picture was actually, this is a real picture, was used in the movie. It was used to describe what's called the human agony. In this case, it is a headless mouse. It is a headless mouse. They're growing a headless mouse in an external womb. The legs, you see the tail. That headless mouse has all the organs that a mouse has. It's just an organ sac with little residual legs there, but without a head. Now, you know why they're doing that. They're doing it to help provide a host of organs for all those sick mice that are out there. Is that what they're doing it for? No, they're perfecting the technology so it can be done at a human level. A headless human growing organs for profit. Organ farms, manufacturing, human organs. And this is real. This is now. This is, I mean, it's actually about 10 years old. So, eugenics, genetic engineering, cloning, genoism, these are public policy issues that are out there and we need to be involved in. What is eugenics? And we're nearly done here, and we'll break for lunch. Social philosophy, which advocates the improvement of human hereditary traits through various forms of intervention by the state. The state would purify the world of those traits or people that are considered undesirable. We saw that in Germany. The undesirables were a category that were collected by the school buses. Well, eugenics is nothing more than a good birth defined by the state. Now, the eugenic advocates from the dawn of the whole eugenic movement was Darwin first, his cousin Galton, who formulated the first science of eugenics, which was, a few years later, picked up by a woman by the name of Margaret Sanger. Funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, Margaret Sanger trained people all over the world, including certain lieutenants from Hitler's Nazi Germany, who came to America to learn about how eugenics was being applied through public policy. Do you know that nearly every state in the nation had a eugenic club? I mean, at state fairs, you would go to the state fairs and you would find the Fitter Family Club. And the Fitter family was the attempt to categorize and award all of those families that had all of the traits that they were looking for in the human race that were admirable at the time. They didn't include African Americans, they didn't include Native Americans, didn't include ethnic groups from certain countries, but surprisingly enough, they were Caucasian, white, and, you know, blonde-haired, blue-eyed. Where did Hitler get this stuff? From the United States of America in the 1920s, through the eugenic movement started by Margaret Sanger, known as Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood, founded by this woman, where right now, most of the abortion clinics in America, Planned Parenthood clinics, are located in minority neighborhoods. Majority-minority neighborhoods. Georgia kills more African Americans by abortion than any other state in the nation. We attempted to stop it, and what we were told is, can't do that. Can't do that, because we got to get rid of all those we've got too many of. Do you know who they were quoting when they said that at a legislative level to us? They were quoting Ginsburg, Justice Ginsburg of the Supreme Court. She said, I thought this was supposed to do away with all those we had too many of, talking about abortion. It's here with us today, public policy, public opinion, being debated. What about designing your own baby? You know, there was a clinic in Texas that did just that. Pay your money, take your choice. You want blonde hair, blue eyes? You want the propensity for musical ability? No way they can guarantee it, but they sold it. That's what they sold. All through the genetic makeup. The United States government right now is debating forming a DNA database of your DNA. When you get a blood test at the hospital and they send it off, setting up a DNA blood bank depository database. It's been done in Texas and they overturned it. So, you know, these are things that once enough DNA goes into the pool, they can identify those characteristics and traits that will yield the greatest good for the greatest number. Utilitarian selling point. Once again, raising his head. Well, you know, if you could pick your own baby, and right now, you could go out and get Madonna's DNA, and have a clone of Madonna transplanted into your womb, what if you're the 999th copy of Madonna? What does that do to your self-esteem and your self-worth? You have a conference of Madonna kids, you know, like twins do. I mean, we don't have any law at all. It's not that it's against these things. We don't have any law at all. There are no parameters in place. And it is the pro-life movement that needs to be providing these parameters. Cloning, primarily being driven by homosexuality. In Georgia, when we tried to outlaw cloning, that's where the opposition came from. Because homosexual couples right now, now I'm not describing science fiction to you, 2 lesbians in California can take a skin cell from one of them, zap that skin cell back to its pluripotent stage, stem cell stage, command it to turn into a sperm, a male sperm, and then take that female sperm, meld it to the egg of her partner, and have a child that is implanted through in vitro. Right now, the longest they've lived is 14 days. But it won't be long until that happens. Well, let's carry it one more step. What's to stop a lesbian from having the same thing done to her own egg and sperm coming together, creating her own clone? There's no law. There's no policy debate that is sticking with the American public yet on these things. But right now, cloning is being driven by homosexuality and the homosexual life. And then Genoism, creating the perfect race, the H plus Homo Perfectus, and then allowing it through germline intervention to continue through normal sexual reproduction. Now, you can say that creating the perfect race can't go on in America. We wouldn't stand for that. We've seen the evidence in Nazi Germany. At our Emory University in downtown Atlanta, the reproductive center says this in describing the mechanical process of cryopreserving embryos through in vitro fertilization, fertility treatment. Only high-quality embryos are selected to be cryopreserved or to make it to the next stage. Since poor quality embryos seldom survive the freezing and thawing process. You know, the devil's in the details. It's all in language. Let's read that a different way. Only high-quality children are selected for cryopreservation, since poor quality children seldom survive the freezing and thawing process. At least they said seldom. At least they acknowledge their finite discretion and determination. They can't be right 100% of the cases. They'll actually have some poor quality children survive the freezing and thawing process. But out of the preponderance of caution, let's go ahead and kill them anyway, is what they're saying. Rather than the respect for human life and human dignity, there is a bias against it in our medical community. There is no law against it. Now, this was pulled out yesterday evening from Transhumanist magazine, H+. It's an interview with a German transhumanist. The question is there any interest in eugenics in Germany now, or is it a totally taboo subject? The answer is, due to Nazi history in Germany, eugenics is actually a total taboo topic here, regardless of differences in definition, goals, or means. It's also similar with procedures like pre-implantation, genetic diagnosis, euthanasia, and other human enhancement technologies that are also often viewed in this context. It ain't happening in Germany. Why? Why? Obvious. They've learned their lesson. They are the most restrictive Western country in these areas because they know that ideas have consequences. And those consequences result in the judgment of God. They know it by experience. And look at how far down the line we have come. You know, in the 20th century, it's enough that we were pro-life, but in the 21st century, it's not going to be enough. We've also got to be pro-human. We've got to be speaking out against the blasphemy and the horror. As the church, as the emerging technologies take root, we should be there speaking into the issue, having an impact. Now, Dr. David Prentice is one of the leading Christian voices in this realm today. He works for Family Research Council. He's a close friend of mine, working with me very closely to develop a public policy in Georgia that would restrict a whole host of these issues. And he is decrying me, Dan, we're losing. We're losing. There's no pro-life group out there willing to engage. They aren't doing it. They're so focused on Roe, on saving the babies, which is what we've been trying to do, and see that we don't see the other challenges against the sanctity of life and human dignity that are arising in the 21st century. And I'm telling you that it is Germany's slippery slope that led to their judgment that we are tracking in a parallel sense perfectly. I hope I've shown the evidence for that. We show it out here on the chart. This is one of the things that you can use with the students to bring this up and use these arguments, which we'll show you how to use after lunch. Once again, dehumanization through the denial of personhood is one panel. The circumstances of conception, should a person be legally killed under the law based on their manner of conception and their circumstances. These are the pillars of understanding that we call pillars of personhood, beginning with the biblical foundation of truth. And we are asking not that you get engaged in anything different than what you're doing now, other than we would like some help. I know Brenda would, with the ballot initiative here in Florida that raises awareness, that actually accomplishes the education. If a legitimate political endorsement criteria were set up by Personhood Florida, politicians would have to educate their own public and defend themselves in the forums. That's what we saw in Georgia when the governor of Georgia, not governor, but Congressman Nathan Deal, running against Karen Handel. Anybody know who Karen Handel is? Karen Handel is that Susan B. Komen hero that came against Susan B. Komen and took away their funding, exposed that they were part of Planned Parenthood's whole pantheon. Anyway, Karen Handel had a rape and incest exception. Nathan Deal did not. Why? 20 years before, Nathan Deal ran against me, and I made the issue of abortion central. As a Democrat, he later crossed over and became a Republican, then joined us at Georgia Right to Life with a no exceptions position for 18 years, and then ran for governor against another moderate Republican pro-lifer. Rape and incest exceptions versus one that didn't. He won by 1,200 votes out of a million. Out of a million. We were credited with making the difference, and the rest is history. Standing for the sanctity of life as a lighthouse keeper. I mean, what's involved? You get up in the evening, you turn on the light, and your job is done basically for the day. It doesn't take a lot to switch on the light. The psalmist says, the giving of light brings understanding. And that's all we're trying to do with the culture, is get them to understand that ideas have consequences, and that we would all be better off with a high view of the sanctity of life. As a lighthouse keeper, it's only when the storm and the wind and the waves come against you, because of the nature of who and what you are, that you start feeling the peril of the consequences of your position. And what I want to show you, and what I want to ask you to consider, is yes, it's in the midst of the storm that the light needs to shine the brightest. We are in a very dark time in our history. And we need lighthouse keepers that will take this message out into the culture. You may have seen this poster before, this picture. I thought it was Photoshop. There's no way there could be waves that big with a guy standing in an open doorway as they come crashing around. Well, I researched it. You know, it's absolutely true. This is the lighthouse at our mint. And can you imagine being in his shoes with the force of nature coming against you to such an extent, and yet doing it day in and day out? Let's watch what was captured on film, and you consider your own commitment. How about it? Feel that way sometimes out there in the culture, going up against what seem insurmountable forces? Jesus said, hide your light. Do not hide your light under a bushel, but hold it up for all to see. We're being called to be that lighthouse keeper. And I want to challenge you to do that more so and more as the day approaches for the time that we look forward to the Lord's coming. Will you be a light in the darkness? When I ask Brenda to come up and tell us what to do in regards to lunch, and after lunch we're going to go out to the display and just show you how to use it and do a little bit of role playing so that everybody's comfortable. Nobody's comfortable role playing. I'm not. And I was terrified of speaking to the college students the first time I did it. But I tell you, it becomes addictive because you win. You actually see them changing their opinion in their mind. It's so rewarding. So let's focus on that after lunch, Brendan.